So as I was saying, the main sharing in non-duality is that there is a reality to our experience, and that the reality of our experience is a universal reality. There is one reality, and that is the reality of consciousness, and that it is this one reality that is experienced as a personal reality when there is an identification of this universal consciousness with a personal body-mind. This identification creates an impression of separation, creates a feeling, a sensation, a me sensation that is an impression that has an angst in it. It has an unhappiness in it because of the association with the mortal body-mind. Due to the mortality of the body-mind, due to the impermanence of the body-mind, the experience of personality, of the person, is an unhappy one. And so the exploration, the non-dual exploration, is the exploration of what we truly are before the identification with a form. The exploration has two dimensions. One of them is the understanding at the intellectual level, meaning to explore via the mind the belief that consciousness is separate and personal. And to ask yourself, what is the evidence that I have that indeed this consciousness, whatever it is that hears these words, is limited to a body-mind? This is an important exploration that basically requires you to ponder whether in your experience the consciousness that hears these words, whether in your experience it has any limitation. And we can explore that together whenever, if we are drawn to do so. The other aspect of the non-dual contemplation takes place at the body feeling level. And rather than exploring whether consciousness is personal and limited via the mind, it is a relaxation of the body, a releasing and a surrender of all the sensations, of all the bodily sensations that arise, and releasing them into the vastness, into the openness, into the space out of which they arise. So this is just briefly a few words about the Advaita, about the non-dual experience, the non-dual meditation or contemplation. So what I do in the Hangout is basically answer whatever questions you have. So if there are any questions you want to explore, just speak your question, or you can even write your question in the chat box. There is a chat box. If you move your cursor to the upper left corner, there is a chat box, or you can just simply share your question and we can go into it together. Yes, Philip.
Yes. So yeah.
I'm going to increase your volume, Philip, one moment, if you don't mind. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So so Magdi, so basically, so yeah, like you said, there is the intellectual understanding.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's that's really clear for me, I think, that is clear. But so then what to do after that?
Well, you see, what happens is that life is going to present you and with what to do. It's going to challenge you. It's going to present situations that will trigger the me response and the me feeling. You might just maybe going to the store to buy something, or maybe somebody promised to meet you in a cafe at 12 o'clock and you go at 12 o'clock and they don't show up. Or you might just simply be driving to work and somebody cuts you off in traffic, or maybe your friend or your partner or member of your family disappoints you in their behavior. And what this will do, these situations, these worldly situations, will trigger the me sensation.
The contraction.
Yes, the contraction, absolutely. So although you have figured out, you understand that you are consciousness and that this consciousness is not personal, that basically you are this presence that is hearing these words. Although you have understood that, still you get triggered, you see. So your question what to do is to live your understanding. You live your understanding. So you, for example, you can ask yourself, Philip, how would consciousness react if it's cut off in traffic? If, for example, somebody cuts consciousness off in traffic, or if, for example, somebody breaks a promise, they made a promise to you, you as consciousness, you see, not you as Philip, you as consciousness.
Yeah.
If somebody does not meet your expectation, how would consciousness respond? Would consciousness, which is universal again, don't forget, we have already established in that we understand, there is an understanding that I am presence, that I am this borderless, universal, seamless consciousness. So that's already understood. But now that life is presenting you with these situations, and then what to do is to live it, to experiment with wait a minute, there is a feeling here that I want to really get upset at them. Why did they do that to me? You take a look at that from a different perspective, from the perspective of consciousness, from the perspective of universal presence. And from that perspective, you get your guideline. You get a certain directive, like consciousness would, for example, be understanding. For example, you could understand that maybe there are circumstances that were beyond this person's control that led them to, for example, arrive late, and maybe they forgot their phone. They were not able to call you from from whatever. So you're open to various possibilities besides the possibility of why did they do that to me, besides the response that comes from the me response, you see. The other thing that you could do also, Philip, is consider that the other is the very same consciousness that you are, without any iota of difference. So it is that same consciousness that appears as this other, that is looking through these seemingly other eyes. You see, you open yourself up to that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the rest is up to grace.
Well, yes, you, in a way, you are helping grace. Let's say you are grace. I mean, we are the self. We are consciousness, right? Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
So
Yes.
it says there's nothing to do.
Yeah. Well,
People,
it's,
takes exercise, whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this.
And
I
then the rest is yeah. The rest.
well, the rest is you wait and you see how uh, how deeply this goes, how pivotal it is to make those teeny tiny shifts. That somebody cuts you off in traffic and you respond from the openness. You respond from consciousness. It's what they say. The devil lies in the details. It's you know it it, it takes that little living that moment, that very simple moment of you go to the store and you pay $2, it's supposed to give you 50 cents back, they give you 25 cents back, and you think, oh, they're trying to rob, to why are they doing this to me? They're trying to rip me off. You say, but you approach it from a different perspective. You say, well, wait a minute, hmm, you know, this person, got distracted, or maybe they have a need. They must raise $100 by the end of the day, and they have to do it to help their dog. They have to get some medicine for the dog who's dying, whatever. So these little living your understanding goes very, very far. I wouldn't say there is nothing to do. I wouldn't say that. That's not something that I share with people. There is a lot to do, but it's so beautiful, and you're doing it out of love and out of understanding. You're living your understanding rather than living your conditioning. That's a lot to do, Philip. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You come home and you expect dinner to be ready, and it's not. You get irritated, or you're tired, you want to rest, and your partner or your son or daughter or mother wants to talk to you, and you're tired, and you say, Mom, I'm tired, but there is no, they're not ready to give you that space, and you get irritated. Living your understanding is the bulk of the sadhana. And the more you do it, the more beautiful it is. Not only it 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 gives you immediate feedback rather than getting angry and irritated, which gives you the immediate feedback of irritation and unhappiness. The welcoming and the surrendering to the divine, to grace, to truth, to the absolute, to reality. This surrendering gives you immediate feedback. It opens your heart and massages you inside with beauty and love. It gives you immediate feedback. And that's very, very beautiful, because it has like a reinforcement theory. It reinforces, it deepens your establishment of your understanding in your complete being. It's sort of it's a sort of of trusting grace and surrendering to grace and living the surrender, living the trust, rather than living the me contraction or the me impression. And in time, this impression of me starts to get more and more transparent, and there'll be more and more space, more and more gaps between the contractions, more breathing room, and the openness and the spaciousness will become more available to you and will permeate your being.
Yeah, this is already, I'm experiencing a lot of it. I mean, where
Yes.
it's very relative, but it feels like it's there. Yet there is this feeling that that there is that the experience of it is not there yet. The full experience.
Yeah, I understand. It's a moment by moment living it, Philip. It's and noticing in this very moment right now, the openness of presence.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
The relaxed openness of presence. I'm not trying to impress you. You're not trying to impress me. You're relaxed, noticing the openness, noticing the beautiful quality of openness.
Openness, yeah.
Yeah. And it's this moment by moment noticing it, noticing the openness, that it's there, effortlessly, it's there, and effortlessly, it's very beautiful. It's relaxed and open. It's not trying to do anything.
Was your teacher, your main teacher, was it Francis Lucille?
I met Francis about 5-6 years ago. I've been, on the path, since the 70s,
Was he important part of your?
Francis was a very, very important part of my journey, and I consider him. I don't call anybody else my teacher, but Francis, yes, Francis is a very dear friend and a great guide.
Yeah, I was just there, and your name came up.
Oh, you were at Francis. Oh, beautiful. Yes, in Temecula. You went up to Temecula, were you? Or
sorry?
You were in Temecula. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I was with some people, and your name was coming up.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, Francis. Very lovely. Very beautiful community over there. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Philip. Thank you for your question.
And okay, if there's nobody else jumping, like I'm willing to give.
Sure, no problem.
But if nobody else, it's more kind of like, I don't know, like a question, philosophically. I'm originally from Poland.
Yes.
So like my grandfather died during the Second World War, and my mother is still alive, and she kind of, we talk a lot about the war, and really the first 50 years, of the last century, in Europe, was just a disaster, a massacre, the war after war, and Stalin and Hitler and the gulags and the concentration camps.
Yeah.
How to, sort of, if this awareness, this conscious awareness, this universal awareness, it's so beautiful and so amazing, and when I listen to people like Francis or yourself, there looks like there is some sort of direction, there is some influence that is coming from this awareness, conscious awareness. How to put these two together, this incredible loving energy that somehow allows for just incredible disaster to be happening at the same time.
Yeah, you know, it depends from what perspective you're looking. If you're looking from the perspective of the phenomenal world, it's a disaster. If you look, for example, at mortality, mortality is innate to all of us, meaning to the body mind. So you could be looking at that as, quite a disaster in that basically we're condemned to death from the moment those bodies are born. They're condemned to death. Or you could look around nature and you could see, for example, over the thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that, for example, decimated, species and thousands of or hundreds of thousands of acres and toxified the air and asphyxiated animals and so on and so forth. Um, from that level, Philip, uh, it seems that yes, it is, very tragic. But from the perspective of consciousness, meaning the reality of what appears. You see, what appears has a reality. Its reality, whatever reality it has in its appearance, uh, is borrowed from the reality that that makes it appear. Of course, like you're a student of Francis, so you hear Francis often speak about this. There's just one reality, and somehow we know there is one reality. So the reality of the world uh, is not distinct from the one reality. So the question is, what is this one reality? They say, when you go out into the world, it seems very chaotic. It seems that this is dying. There is a lot of suffering and misery in the world, and death, and in the world. Uh, from that position, it's very tragic. But when you bring it back to the source, when you bring it back to what is the reality of all this experience, you come back, you return to consciousness. And so you look at what is happening from consciousness. And from consciousness, nothing is actually happening. A good example is you you're dreaming a, that you are being chased by a lion, and in that dream, from that perspective, it's quite awful. Or for example, you're dreaming a fire that's burning a house where there are some dogs or some pets that's left in there. And it seems very, very awful. But when you return to the reality of consciousness, you realize that there is really a different perspective to it, which takes away the impression that in fact this is what's happening. So it's really important in looking at this question not to go into your thoughts about the world, into your thoughts about events, but to go to your experience, because there is a reality to your experience that has more, let's say, validity than the impression that you have from thoughts or from things that you see or from things that you hear. And your experience is an unhappy experience whenever you experience yourself as a person, whenever you experience yourself as a me and a him, or a me and a her, that's where the unhappiness is truly revealed to you in your experience. Because when you perceive somebody else that's suffering, you are experiencing an empathy with the suffering of this person, and you are experiencing actually love. You see, you could be hearing about people suffering in Africa or in Tibet or other parts of the world, but what you experience then is not, oh my God, how awful it is. What you experience is a warmth and a connection and an empathy for it, which is the love, which basically is a sympathetic expression of our connectivity, of our interconnectivity as this one consciousness. Like, it's like when you have an ache in your left arm. The ache is in your left arm, but you feel it. You see, you feel, because of your arm and your body is all connected as one. The ache is not out there, it's actually you. It's you are experiencing that out of empathy. It's an empathy that is an expression of the oneness, of the wholeness of the body. Yeah, you see? In the same way, when you hear about these events that are happening in the world that are unhappy, your experience is that of empathy and affection and love. But the suffering is not there. The suffering only occurs when you separate yourself from the other, and you perceive the other as being wrong, or as being atrocious, or and of course the subtitle is that I am not like that. I am. They are, very awful, but I'm not. You see, that's the small print, of course. But we don't look at that. We know what that is. But it's important to realize that at any point in time, it can happen where this very body-mind might do something that others might perceive as very awful. There might be circumstances that will arise, and you don't know when and how, where you might act in a way that is atrocious. Also, Philip, until there is an understanding of, or a rapprochement, getting closer to our true nature, to an understanding of the reality and wholeness of consciousness, until we get onto the path, we are living in fear and even terror. And when we are living in fear, we create fear, you see. So we act in ways that scare others. There is a saying, scared people are scary, So once you start to contemplate that, there is an understanding that develops in you that loosens those notions of right and wrong, those categorical notions of right and wrong, and broadens the your understanding. And finally, from consciousness point of view, none of this matters, because, as I mentioned before, consciousness dreams all dreams, and consciousness is not a phenomenal. It's not a phenomenal event, and phenomenal events, what they see, the seeming phenomenal events, their substance is consciousness itself. Is form, is formlessness. So the formless is the true reality of what the mind refers to as forms. And I know that from the belief system that I am a form, it's very hard to comprehend that. It's as if it seems as an insult to our intelligence. But at some point in time, there are breaks in our belief system where we sort of see that what seemed to be real was just an illusion. We get like these little glimpses, maybe not so little, but anyways, we get glimpses that loosens these the whole belief in a material world and an objective world with that has its a reality that's apart from consciousness. So, for all what's happening in the world, we are not separate from that. As consciousness, we're not separate from that. We are dreaming this dream, and there is love that permeates the entire space. And we are that love. We are that love, and the recognition that we are that love is very important recognition, because it sort of opens the gates, of the river. We build those dams that block the water. We open the gates of, figuratively speaking, of the blockade of that is me and the world, me and them, and there is the entire space gets permeated with the love and the affection that we are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, whatever occurs in our life has an aspect of guiding us home. even suffering that arises, or maybe I would even say in particular, the suffering that arises in our space, it somehow makes us stop and wonder and explore and ponder and contemplate. It draws us to the edge of our shell, and it's as if we come to the edges of ourself and sort of scratch at the walls, trying to explore a little further than what we have considered ourselves and what we have considered life to be. At some point, there is an understanding that everything that's happening in our life, although oftentimes the mind might not understand it, that at some level it is speaking to us a different message. Even when we are rebelling, there is an aspect of our being that is listening. It might not sprout right away, and it might not sprout in this present situation, but there will be a maturing, there will be an understanding that will reveal itself. And all events that happen in our life are interconnected towards that understanding. So there can be a broader understanding of the interconnectivity of all the events that are occurring in our life and all the events that are occurring throughout the entire cosmos, through the entire universe. Events that are occurring to people in Bangladesh, in Africa, in Asia, in Middle East. It's an interconnectivity that is leading to the revelation of the wholeness and the reality of consciousness, the universal nature of consciousness. And as that understanding ripens, we find ourselves effortlessly more in an open, receptive, surrendered, but not resignation, more of an openness, an allowing and an embracing of all what is occurring, sort of taking it in our arms like a mother takes her baby in her arms. And what accompanies that is a relaxation in the body-mind and a sweetness in our experience that, of course, has no borders and affects the entire hologram. There is great beauty in that understanding.
Mm.
and it's not personal. It's actually an offering. It's more of a giving than a receiving. Well, are there any other questions? Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I am very grateful. Thank you very much for a beautiful company. Nice to see you, Philip and Lina.
Thank you,
Very
Michael.
lovely. Okay, beautiful. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.